Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. Welcome back once again to FOMO Friday. Yes, I'm Doug Morgan. We love to bring you FOMO Friday every Friday. We don't want you to have that fear of missing out. So we bring you some stories that you probably should know about. Maybe some you've heard about, maybe some you haven't, but they're pretty important usually, and we tend to throw in a few funny ones too now and again. So anyway, let's get right into it. We're going to get into what we call the DOGE Report. We're going to be doing a series of these. And basically what it is just reporting on what DOGE is doing. Now, you probably know that DOGE is the is the program that Elon Musk is running at behest of Donald Trump. And what they're doing is they're going through the government and they're trying to find waste. And Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire reports this. It says, this week, as the Trump administration goes line by line through the federal budget, people did notice this was going on. Reporting from Kyle Becker, Liz Wheeler, and others has just established that the left-wing outlet Politico from fiscal year 2016 to 2025 has raked in more than $8 million in total from the federal government agencies. Yeah, specifically Politico, who this podcast, we've used some of Politico's stuff. They're very left wing, and oftentimes we kind of use it to kind of go off of what the left is trying to spew out there. But anyway, they've raked in $8 million from the federal government. And specifically, Politico has been selling subscriptions to its so-called Politico Pro service for $10,000 a pop. Wow, $10,000 a pop. NASA spent something like $500,000 on these subscriptions, and so did the Food and Drug Administration. They spent nearly $520,000 for just 37 subscriptions. The State Department spent more than $1 million. The Defense Department spent more than $850,000. That's a little better, but still it's a lot of money. And for its part, USAID, the agency that funds secret co-ops all over the world, spent tens of thousands of dollars on Politico Pro. And it's not just Politico. That's receiving massive amounts of money from the federal government in recent years. The Associated Press has been pulling in several $1 million a year from the government, going back several years. And so has the New York Times, by the way. In fact, just last August, the New York Times reported that it had received over $1 million from the federal government. This is big money that before 2021, the New York Times wasn't making. But after the Biden administration came into power, the fire hose of federal subscriptions just opened up. And all of this is documented on official government websites. But until now, it's gone unreported. And as egregious as this particular story is, the truth is that this problem is far more endemic of the journalism industry. As Mike Servochik has pointed out, until this week, basically the whole D.C. Northern Virginia economy ran on tax money funneled through NGOs and nonprofits and media outlets. The White House announced the other day that we've spent $20 million for a Sesame Street show in Iraq. Yeah, $8 million to teach Sri Lankan journalists how to avoid binary gendered language, $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, and $2 million to help the BBC, quote, value the diversity of Libyan society, unquote. Yeah, that's where your taxpayer dollars are going. And as The writer Peachy Keenan pointed out, we also spent $40 million for AIDS drugs for transgender prostitutes in South Africa. $40 million. Specifically, the money provides, quote, accessible clinical interventions for sex workers. And there's also $8 million that we spent to study the, quote, effects of flavored cigarettes on bisexuals and lesbians. Yeah, let me repeat that. There's $8 million that we spent to study the effects of flavored cigarettes on bisexual and lesbians, as well as roughly 100 million to combat HIV in Ukraine. Again, that's the stated reason for all of these expenditures. Almost certainly, most of this money is simply just being stolen. Well, the journal reports insurers pocketed $50 billion, that's with a B, from Medicare for diseases no doctor treated. Yeah, $50 billion. Here's how the journal explained the problem. Insurers can add diagnoses to ones that patients' own doctors submit. So even though the doctors didn't say that this was an issue, the insurers added it anyway. See, Medicare gave insurers that option so they could catch conditions that doctors neglected to record. Well, the journal's analysis, however, found many diagnoses were added for which patients received no treatment or that contradicted their doctor's views. So, yeah, a lot of money is just being flushed down the toilet. But DOGE is now going line by line, and they have some really good guys working for them. And they are really doing a wonderful job, and it's just weeks into the Trump administration. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on that. We'll continue to report on that for you, let you know what's happening there. Some really good things, though, are happening and are going to happen in the area of religious freedom in Washington, D.C. Vice President J.D. Vance said on Wednesday that religious freedom would be a top focus, that's how he put it, a top focus of the Trump administration at home and abroad, saying there was much more to do to secure religious liberty. That's great news, is it not? Vance made the comments during a speech at the International Religious Freedom Summit at the Washington Hilton, where he highlighted actions taken during the first Trump administration to advocate for religious freedom, saying the second administration would expand that focus. Here's his quote: "We remain the world's largest majority Christian country, and the right to religious freedom is protected by the people for everybody, whether you're a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, or no faith at all," he said. But religious liberty is not simply, as we all know, about legal safeguards. It is also about fostering a culture in which faith can thrive, so that men and women can fully appreciate and respect the God-given rights of their fellow citizens, unquote. That's a good quote. That is a good quote. He said that religion helps people better connect to the particular, the particular, helping them be more committed to their neighbors and communities. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong there. The conference was attended by 1,500 religious liberty advocates and sponsors by several companies and organizations, including Meta, the Washington Times Foundation, the International Center for Law and Religious Studies, and Samaritan's Purse. Quote, "In China, across Europe, and throughout Africa, and the Middle East, the first Trump administration took critical steps to protect the rights of the faithful, whether that was by rescuing pastors who were persecuted by foreign regimes, or bringing relief to Christians and other faith communities facing genocidal terror from ISIS." This is a quote from Vance, and he then pointed to actions already taken by Trump during his first few weeks in office, including issuing pardons for 23 peaceful pro-life protesters who were targeted by the Biden administration. Of course, we covered that here on the podcast. And here's another quote by Vance. He said, "The president has issued orders to end the weaponization of the federal government against religious Americans, pardon pro-life protesters who were unjustly imprisoned under the last administration, and importantly, stop the federal censorship used to prevent Americans from speaking their conscience and speaking their mind, whether it is in their communities or online." That's what Vance said. Now, the vice president also praised Trump's choice to nominate his former Senate colleague Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, saying that he was a champion of religious liberty. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom also praised Rubio's confirmation, saying he would be stronger than his predecessor. Well, that's not really saying much, but anyway, we've had a few doozies in that department. But anyway, one of the things that we're seeing here is that when it comes to Trump and his first few weeks in office, is that he really is going after some of this pork, these slush funds, the areas that are just hemorrhaging money. I mean, it's not like we're not in debt or anything, right, as a country, and so hemorrhaging money is a terrible thing, particularly in our case. But anyway, the Trump administration will place almost all U.S. agency and international development, or USAID, employees on administrative leave. Some are already there, and some are going to happen today, as it evaluates the agency's role in how it distributes taxpayer dollars. So you may have heard about this one. The left is really kicking up their heels on this one, and it kind of tells you a little bit about where they've been getting some of their money, right? The agency posted on its website on Tuesday that all of its direct hire personnel would be on administrative leave starting February 7th at 11:59 p.m., with the exception of designated personnel responsible for mission-critical functions, core leadership, and specially designated programs. Those who will not be placed on leave will be told by yesterday at 3 p.m. So, like I say, this has kind of been a process, but in recent days, USAID, I don't know why it's so hard for me to say that today, has been under intense scrutiny from the Trump administration and Elon Musk, who has been tasked with heading up President Donald Trump's Department of Government Efficiency program. That's the DOGE we were just talking about. Musk said on Monday that Trump had given him the go-ahead to start shutting down the agency because of its wasteful spending on ideological projects. Shortly after, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was named acting administrator for USAID. Said, quote, "They have basically evolved into an agency that believes that they're not even a U.S. government agency, that they are out, they're a global charity, that they take the taxpayer money and they spend it on global charity irrespective of whether it is in the nation's interest or not." And that's what Rubio said, actually. The agency, which has some 10,000 employees, said it was developing a plan to arrange and pay for all USAID employees overseas to return to the U.S. After that, it would examine ending all contracts with employees that are not determined to be essential. Again, quote, "The agency will consider case-by-case exceptions and return travel extensions based on personnel or family hardship, mobility, or safety concerns, or other reasons. For example, the agency will consider exemptions based on the timing of dependents' school terms, for instance, and personal or family medical needs, pregnancy, and other reasons." This is what the agency said, and they said that further guidance on how to request an exception will be forthcoming. And even the post that they put on there, the message concluded with "Thank you for your service." Now, the postal dissolution of USAID comes just days after Musk started highlighting the ways the agency allocated funding in recent years, arguing it should be completely gutted. And in fact, here's what he said. He said, said it became apparent that it is not an apple with a worm in it. He said that what we have is just a ball of worms. you've got to basically get rid of the whole thing. It's beyond repair. So it's not an apple with a worm in it. It's just a ball of worms. So according to White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, USAID recently spent $1.5 million to push DEI in Siberia. The $70 million for a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 on a transgender opera in Colombia, and $32,000 on a transgender-themed comic book in Peru. So there's where some of your tax dollars is going to. And actually, this is a much deeper story here. There's a lot going on, and there's even more that you don't even know that has been spent through this crazy agency. So, tell you what, we're going to cover this more in depth on Monday. So after the weekend, we'll do a whole report on this, and we will go much more in depth into what's happening here and get some opinions on the USAID and how it's been spending just gobs of money and why it should be shut down, or maybe why it shouldn't. We'll get some opinions kind of on both sides. So look for that on Friday. Going to another story, which again is another really good thing. I mean, are you tired of the winning yet? I mean, seriously, it's been coming in waves. And President Donald Trump, Trump's Wednesday executive order aimed at keeping men out of women's sports will specifically target schools and colleges. The executive order, titled "Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports," will reportedly ban males who identify as transgender from participating in girls and women's sports in schools and colleges. That's according to the Wall Street Journal in the report that it outlined there. The report notes that Trump could direct his Department of Education to enforce those standards based on Title IX rules, and if schools don't comply, they could be investigated. Right? I mean, that's fair enough, right? Collegiate swimmer turned advocate Riley Gaines was in attendance at her at this signing on Wednesday, the 39th annual National Girls and Women's in Sports Day. Actually, the other activists who have confirmed attendance at the event was Terry Schilling, who runs the Pro Family American Principles Project and the Independent Women's Forum, which has been a leader in the fight to protect women's sports. During the 2022 NCAA Women's Championships, Gaines, swimming for the University of Kentucky, and other female swimmers were forced to compete against a male swimmer named Leah, or formerly Will, Thomas. You might have heard Leah Thomas as his name. Gaines and Thomas tied for fifth place, and but the trophy was given to only Thomas at the award ceremony. Gaines has since dedicated herself to advocating for female sports and athletes. Quote, despite tying down to the 100th with Thomas in the women's freestyle, I was denied the trophy because the NCAA claimed it was necessary for Thomas to hold the trophy when the photos were being taken. This is what Gaines said, testifying before Congress. She said, it was clear to me, my teammates and my competitors, that they had reduced everything we had worked our entire lives for down to a photo op to validate the feelings and the identity of a male. She also said that we also had to share a locker room and change in front of this 6'4" fully intact male, she detailed. We were not forewarned of this arrangement, and we were not asked for our consent, and we did not give our consent to this exposure and had to be exploited. Trump has already signed the executive order stipulating that it's the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, and the administration's Department of Education has also told K through 12 schools and higher learning institutions that Title IX protections will be recognized on the basis of biological sex, not gender identity, like what was under the Biden administration, as you'll recall. Additionally, the president has signed an order banning taxpayer-funded gender transitions for minors, which has already stopped hospitals from performing these often irreversible procedures. And just last week, Trump signed another order seeking to stop federal funding for K through 12 schools that teach radical ideologies, including gender ideology. Republicans are now working to pass legislation measures to back up Trump's orders. For example, the House passed the Protection of Women's and Girls Act last month, though the Senate has yet to vote on the bill. Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville, appearing on the Megyn Kelly show, has urged Republicans to get that bill passed, or at least get lawmakers on the record anyway, right? Quote, we've got the majority on our side. We've got to get it to the floor. This is what Tuberville said. Senate Majority Leader John Thune told me he's going to get it to the floor, and he hasn't done it. Now it's time to put up or shut up. So, yeah, some good things going on there. Again, we're just winning all the time. There's really neat things happening. And what's funny is that you just see the pushback. The left does not know what to think of what's happening to them right here. It's kind of like a shock and awe type of situation, and they just kind of grasp for straws, and they're throwing mud against the wall, hoping to see what sticks. In fact, from that line of thinking, New York Democratic Attorney General Letitia James warned hospitals in the state against canceling appointments for gender procedures on minors after President Donald Trump signed an executive order to protect children from irreversible surgeries and hormone therapy. In a letter sent to New York health care providers on Monday, James said the hospitals have obligations to comply with New York state law, adding that refusing service to transgender individuals goes against anti-discrimination laws. Ooh, hospitals are going to be between a rock and a hard place here, right? Quote, electing to refuse service to a class of individuals based on their protected status, such as withholding the availability of services from transgender individuals based on their gender identity or their diagnosis of gender dysphoria, while offering such services to cisgender individuals, is discrimination under New York law. This is what the letter stated. Well, hospitals across the U.S. began canceling appointments for life-altering gender procedures on children after Trump signed an order on protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilations. That the Daily Wire White House correspondent Mary Margaret Olhan reported that on Monday. Quote, it's already having its intended effect, preventing children from being maimed and sterilized by adults, perpetuating a radical false claim that they can somehow change a child's sex. That's what the White House said. Quote, hospitals around the country are taking action to downsize or eliminate their so-called gender-affirming care programs. Trump's order threatens to withhold federal funding from any hospital that continues to conduct gender procedures on children. That's according to the New York Times. NYU Langone, one of the top hospitals in New York City, canceled appointments for transgender procedures on minors within days of Trump's orders. Reports of the cancellations led to a protest attended by hundreds of people outside the New York University on Monday evening. Some of the protesters waved transgender flags and carried signs that called on the hospital to continue the irreversible procedures on children. Can you imagine being a part of a protest like that? Can you imagine going outside of a hospital and going, I want you to mutilate these children? I just cannot imagine doing that. But, to each his own, I guess. But dozens of states have taken action to protect children from gender procedures, and more federal action could be on the horizon with the Republican-controlled House and Senate. We're gonna keep our eye on this, and I think we're gonna again see some really good things happen. I think, but kind of getting into I guess, a few funny stories here, okay? I mean, some of these you should probably know about, I guess, but maybe, I don't know. But anyway, we like to end on something kind of funny, and I thought this was kind of funny. There's two stories. One of them's out of Michigan. A Democratic Michigan state representative says she chose to undergo a, get this, voluntary sterilization. A voluntary sterilization to avoid pregnancy after Donald Trump won the 2024 presidential election. I mean, if you don't think that this, that Donald Trump being elected again is just driving them nutso, just listen to this. State Representative Lori Pohutsky, 36. Pohutsky, I don't know how you pronounce that. But anyway, she's 36, and she told a crowd of anti-Trump protesters at the Michigan State Capitol on Wednesday, just under 2 weeks ago, she said, I underwent surgery to ensure that I would never have to navigate a pregnancy in Donald Trump's America. The Midwesterner reported this, and Pohutsky, who identifies as bisexual, by the way, represents part of Wayne County, the largest county in the state where abortion is legal through all 9 months of pregnancy. Quote, I refuse to let my body be treated as currency by an administration that only sees value in my ability to procreate. That's what she told the crowd of protesters. Again, another quote, if you know people who are questioning how serious this is, I'm going to repeat myself. A sitting government official opted for voluntary sterilization because she was uncertain she would be able to access contraception in the future. That's what she added, according to the Michigan Advance. Well, since taking office, Trump has, reinstated the Mexico City policy, stopping U.S. foreign aid from funding abortions, and he adopted pardoned 23 pro-life activists who were prosecuted by Biden's administration. All of this, but it's unclear how any actions taken by Trump administration apply to Pohutsky's reproductive concerns, right? How does that jive? I don't get. And Pohutsky's office has, of course, not responded to any comments on this. Trump said while on the campaign trail that he would leave abortion legislation up to the states, taking, of course, a more moderate stance on the issue than many Republicans. And hundreds of people gathered at the state capitol in Lansing on Wednesday to voice their frustrations over the fast-moving second Trump administration. Protesters carried signs reading, democracy, not oligarchy, and hell no, must go. and even resistance becomes duty. Oh, man, going nuts. Trump derangement syndrome is definitely evident. The Michigan protest was part of the 5051 movement, I guess 50501, I don't know how you'd call that, movement, which sought to stage protests against Trump in all 50 states on Wednesday. Didn't go too well, by the way, for them. But Trump won Michigan in the 2024 election, defeating former Vice President Kamala Harris by over 80,000 votes, by the way, there in Michigan. Michigan Democrats also lost control of the state legislature where Pohutsky is a member. And so anyway, she's big on the LGBTQ issues and abortion stuff and all that kind of thing. So, as far as I'm concerned, if she can't procreate, have children to be parents to them, that's great. I have no problem with that. So anyway, one last one here for you, and then we'll get out of here. But it took over 2 weeks after Inauguration Day for House Democrats to begin to push to impeach President Donald Trump in his second administration. Yes, you heard me right. Impeach. Representative Al Green, a Democrat from Texas, announced Wednesday that he was introducing articles of impeachment, citing the prospect of ethnic cleansing. That's what he said, ethnic cleansing, after Trump proposed the United States take over Gaza. He's proposing that. We'll probably talk a little bit about that later. But But this is what Green said. He said, the movement to impeach the president has begun. I rise to announce that I will bring articles of impeachment against the president for dastardly deeds. Dastardly deeds. I don't know if that's in the Constitution. Proposed and dastardly deeds done. Dastardly deeds. I like that. Anyway, yeah, it's crazy what Donald Trump will do to leftist brains. It really is. But here's the funniest part of the story, okay? I really think this is the funniest part of the story. Elon Musk, who, of course, is leading DOGE and all that kind of stuff. This is what he tweeted out about this announcement that President Donald Trump, might be impeached. Elon Musk just said 2 words. Nobody cares. And he's right. Nobody cares. Nobody cares what articles of impeachment they're going to bring, right? I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous, but it's also very funny at the same time. And so I don't know. You may not think it's all that hilarious. I would love to hear from you. Of course, you can always do that. uncommonsensepodcast.com is the website. Of course, we're all also on YouTube as well, so you can hear it there. And thank you for listening. This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.